Um, how many of you have watched parental guidance on TV? Anybody? I know it was screened in Singapore, but if not, how about the movie? Anybody watched the movie Parental Guidance many years ago? None of you. Okay. Anyway, just confession, all right? I did when it was screened in Australia. It was an Australian series that I watched. I was very interested. As anything to do with parenting, I'm very interested to watch. But I actually didn't know it was being screened until one of the couples told me, "Oh, Angie, do you watch this parental guidance or not?" You know, all the comments that came against the Christian parents. I said, "Why? What happened?" They said, "These Christian parents are so strict, so lacking in love," you know, and all the other parents were quite shocked at their parenting techniques. So I said, "Oh, if that's the case, I better watch, you know, and see what's happening." And the interesting thing is, because every episode, actually it's a whole series of, I think, 12 episodes. And it will feature 12 parents, 12 couples, actually. And then they're of all different backgrounds. And then every episode, what happens is they will screen, you know, they will video the parents and put them through some challenging task with the children. So every set of parents will deal with it differently. So they will tape record all of this, and then they'll play it back to the whole group, to all 12 couples. And at the end of it, together with a parenting expert, they will critique each other. But the beautiful thing is, it's not supposed to be condemning. They are supposed to be encouraging each other, you know, say what I appreciate about this, what I appreciate about that. Of course, they can ask questions like, "I don't understand this," or "I don't understand that." But that doesn't stop the social media on the attacks. Well, so I thought watching it. And then I actually watched 2 different series. The interesting thing is, there is no one Christian parenting style, because that first series, the Christian parents were the strict parents. But the next series, the Christian parents were the gracious, lenient parents. So you ask, so which is the correct Christian parenting style? And that's what we're talking about today, right? Is there a Christian parenting style, timeless principles for us to raise great children? I thank God for the grace that He has given us. And yes, we do have a son who is a senior pastor, but all glory to God, because we made our fair share of mistakes. You know, and today, before I even start again, I do want to say thank you, Pastor Sabrina, Pastor Andrew, for this privilege of sharing with you. And I must admit, like I said, we are human parents. We are imperfect. We make mistakes. I'm no expert. The expert appeared on parental guidance. I'm not her. I'm not him. Okay, but I'm here to share stories. I'm here to share experiences, how we walk through, but definitely from Scripture. Because if you want to talk about timeless principles, the only timeless principles must come from God and with God. You know, so I've entitled today's message, "Timeless Principles for Raising Great Children." So how do you raise great children? What is Christian parenting? Now, I know in the past, and I've taught many Christian parenting classes, and I wish I knew this. I wish I had looked at this a little bit more, even in previous years, you know, teaching all those parenting classes. We've always talked about curriculum. We've talked about, you know, the different styles, whether you're laissez-faire or you're authoritative or you're, you know, authoritarian, democratic, and all of that. But it is more than just styles. It's more than just curriculum. Then we also talk about, Christian parenting must be about loving your children. Then, you know, as I prepared for today's message, I realized actually it's more than about loving your children. Yeah, I know Scripture says, you know, to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and then love one another as yourself. You know, and Christian parents are to model that. But I think it's more than loving your children, because even parents who do not know Jesus love the children. Most parents love the children. And Christian parents do not have a monopoly over loving your children. Sometimes Christian parents overlove their children and spoil them too. So Christian parenting is more than just loving your children. Then, of course, we say, Christian parenting is teaching them how to imitate Jesus, you know, to live like Jesus. Then I'd say, That's more biblical, but still probably not enough, because even in that, our motivation may be self-centered. We do this so that people will look at you and say, hey, you've been a good mother, you've been a good father, and you try model Jesus. Because God judges the motives of our heart. And even with that, it still points back to our own efforts. So how do you separate, or how do you avoid the trap of parenting with your own self-efforts? Well, I want to put to you today that Christian parenting is actually partnership with God. And most of you who have been in RCN, you've heard me, you realize that I like to use this thing about with God. You know what I mean? Like, I remember the last two sermons, we talk about persevere, God is with you, and then pause, God is with you. And today I'm talking about Christian parenting with God again. Why? Because I believe that is what makes us different from the rest of the world. Because we are with God, because God is with us. Why do I say Christian parenting is actually partnership with God? If we start looking at Christian parenting as a teamwork, as a partnership, rather than something I have to do, a responsibility that God has given to me, and I have to fulfill that responsibility, then it falls on me. The burden is on me. But if I change my perspective, which is a very biblical perspective, and say that, yes, God has given me the responsibility, but that responsibility is actually an invitation to teamwork with Him to parent the children that He has given to me. Why do I say parenting is teamwork with God? Let's turn to Psalm 127. Yeah, and I will read the whole psalm because it's a beautiful psalm. Unless is very, very important. It means if you don't do this, then nothing happens. Okay? Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat. For He grants sleep to those He loves. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from Him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. Now, this psalm has been called the family psalm very often. And most people attribute it to Solomon writing the psalm. But it is also possible that it could be a psalm written by David for Solomon. But whichever way it is, whether it was from father to son, or the son himself writing the psalm, the key principle is the same. Without God, nothing happens. All your toil, all your efforts will amount to zero. Because it says, unless the Lord builds. Everything else everybody does is in vain. And that is very, very important for us to understand, which means our parenting, you can follow the best curriculum, you can put in your best effort, it is still no guarantee. Okay? We need to partner with God. And it says, unless the Lord builds the house. And this is where we need to understand the context of what this is all about. When the Hebrews use the word house, it normally refers to family. It refers to raising a family. Why? More so because immediately after that, after those two verses about building a house and guarding the city, comes this thing about children are a heritage from the Lord. Offspring a reward. So when they say, unless the Lord builds the house, you labor in vain. Unless He guards the city, you guard also in vain. Why? Because the Hebrews have this saying, why build a house or guard a city if not for the family? And for the Hebrew nation, the family unit is the most important. Everything they do is for the family. Why do you build a house? You build a house so that your family can live in it. Why do you guard the city? Because the city is made up of families. You guard it because you want to guard your family. And you have to understand that this psalm is written with families in mind. And it says, unless you involve God, all your efforts will amount to nothing. So what then is the Christian principle? What are these timeless principles? Let's again look at the word house, okay? It refers to raising a family, and the word ben, which means son, or bath, a daughter, okay, comes from the same root word as house. So when you talk about house, you're talking about your sons and daughters. It's the same as stones and building. You know, when you talk about stones, it refers to the building. So again, this is all about family. So some of you who are sitting here may be wondering, oh no, you're going to talk about parenting, but I'm not a parent. And some of the children were saying, I'm a child, I'm not a parent, so I can switch off now. Please don't switch off, okay? Whatever I'm sharing today, even though it is targeted for parents in particular, all the principles apply to us in life. Because the truth is, unless God builds, everything is in vain. Right? Unless the Lord watches, you can guard and you guard in vain. So it applies to all of us. Biological parents, spiritual parents, we talked about spiritual parenting earlier on. Spiritual parents, children, as you hear me speak, appreciate what your parents are going through, because in due time, you will become parents in the future too. And even children are spiritual parents in your own right. Okay? So it applies to all of us. All the principles I'll be talking about today applies to all of us. Christian parenting is basically joining together, sharing, contributing, and cooperating with God in what He is doing with and for our children. It's not about me doing the parenting, but it is as I share with Him, as I partner with Him, as I hold His hand, as I listen to Him, as I realize that God is on my side. It becomes a habit for me to rely on Him. Then I know that my efforts will be blessed. I'm reminded of John 15:5. Why do I say that partnership with God is so important? Because Jesus Himself says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If, again, that very important word, if you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, which means otherwise, okay, you can do nothing. Zero. So it's the same thing. Christian parenting is about partnering with God, sharing with Him. And partnering with God is not just saying, God help me, God do this, God do this. Partnering means we work together. We do our part as God does His part. So is Christian parenting easy? No. It's not easy. It's challenging, but it is great joy. And if you realize that it is teamwork with God, it is actually very freeing. It's very liberating. Why do I say liberating? Because I realize that if I make mistakes, it's okay. God will cover it. If I don't meet the standards, it's okay because I'm imperfect. But if I don't see it as teamwork, every time something goes wrong, I'll blame myself. Oh, what did I do? Kind of thing. And it's terrible. Even Christian parents go through a lot of guilt. When their children grow up and when their children leave the faith or whatever it is, they go through a lot of guilt. Say, what did I do wrong? Now, I'm not saying that if I partner with God, I'll never make mistakes. I will still make mistakes. But the beauty is, Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20 says that we can expect the best from God, who is able, through His mighty power at work within us, to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. Which means that even in my partnership with God, when I fail, God can turn it around into my good as well as into the good of my children. And because of that, I can look back at my past and still thank God for everything that happened. Would I change things in the past? I guess I would change some things. Do I regret anything? Actually, I don't regret anything. I don't regret the mistakes I made in that sense because I learned from them and our children learned from them. And I think we can help each other learn if we apply some of the principles I'll be teaching today. I'll be sharing with you today, okay? And the most important thing is that we must understand it is teamwork with God because that liberates us. It's not just about me. Because unfortunately, some parents parent their children with the motivation of, I don't want people to think I'm a bad parent. And unfortunately, sometimes they take it out on their children for their own face saving, which is not fair to the child. Okay? So how then would this look like? What are the practical? How will this look like practically? What do you mean by partner with God? How do we do this? Now, I know two favorite parenting verses from Scripture. Okay, and I'm going to share with you these two because in most parenting classes, they will choose these two. The first one comes from Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 to 7, the Shema. Okay, where it says, these commandments I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along this road, when you lie down and when you get up. What does that mean? It means to live 24/7 teaching them about God. Basically, that's what it is. When it says these commandments, we're not just thinking about the written word of God. It's not just teaching the 10 commandments or whatever it is. It's actually teaching them, living out for them what it means to relate with God. What does it mean to live with God on a daily basis? When you sit down, when you lie down, when you sleep, when you walk, it's basically that, like 24/7. Every God-given opportunity, we are to talk about God. Where does God appear in this? You know, sometimes we put God in the closet. We say, yeah, God is everywhere, but we leave home and we live as if He is not around. And then we only remember that He's around on Sunday when we start worshiping Him. Yes, God's presence is so real in this place, you know. But look, He's with you 24/7. Didn't Jesus say, I'm with you till the end of the world. I will never leave you. And if God is with the sparrow, He's there. He's here. He's sitting right here. He leaves with you when you go out. He enters the bus with you when you go up the bus. He drives with you. He is there all the time, and yet we ignore Him. So this scripture actually talks about being intentionally aware of His presence and acknowledging His presence in our relationships, especially with our relationships with our children, in the family, because those are the closest to us. The other favorite is found in Proverbs 22, verse 6. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart. And many people use this as a guarantee. You make sure you dedicate them to the Lord. You make sure you bring them to Sunday school. You make sure you send them to youth group and all, and they will definitely follow the Lord. I'm here to tell you the truth. No guarantee. Why no guarantee? Number one, we are imperfect parents. Number two, we raise imperfect children. But the most important thing is God has given us the freedom of choice. Then you say, then how? Very simple. I cannot answer for my children. I can only answer for myself. My responsibility is to partner with God to create the most positive environment for them to grow in so that they will want to positively respond to Him. That is the best guarantee I have. And then surrender to God with the previous verse that I quoted, Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, that God can do more than I can ever think or imagine. when I surrender my children to Him. Remember, your children are not yours, okay? They are not yours. They are a reward from God. They are actually on loan to you. Okay? They're on loan to you. From the time they are born, please remind yourself, this is on loan to me. My responsibility is to steward this reward that God has given me so that when it's time to let go, I've done the best for this one. All right? Because if you don't realize that, when they grow old, it's very difficult for parents to let go. Especially marrying and all. Oh, that's why we have all this premarital counseling. And we should have premarital counseling for parents-in-laws to be. We should also, how to let go of your children. So children are on loan, all right? Now, the important thing is this. When it says train up, now training means our part. We have a responsibility. No training is easy. I understand that because I was a school swimmer, and I'm a terrible school swimmer because I never go for training. Okay? And my teacher will always look at me. Angelina, where were you? I will miss a lot of training because I was so ill-disciplined. I'm one of those very non-competitive swimmers. I will just finish and do my part, get the points for the school, and that's it. I'm happy. If I don't make the team, fine. But the teachers and my friends are the competitive ones. So they will say, why do you come for training? I say, I will do my part, okay? And they know I will do my part. So all they have to do is put me in events that nobody else wants to do. I'm very persevering. So they will put me in, like the 200 meters individual medley type, where you have to do every single stroke, and nobody wants to take part. And normally I will score points for them because I will definitely get a medal because only 3 people will take part. Okay? And Elaine, you remember Elaine Sung? She was our Singapore school swimmer. She was in my group. So she will always get first prize. Then there will be another one who will always get second prize. I will always get third prize, so no big deal. Okay? So I will train enough to be able to finish, but I don't have to be very fast. I just delay and then they have to wait for me to finish. That's all. Okay? So training a child cannot be like that. Okay? Cannot be like that. Training a child means you have to put in effort. You have to put your whole heart into it because you answer to God. Okay? I've loaned it to you, This is my reward to you. Take care of it. Train up a child in the way he should go. What does it mean? If you read the original, it means according to his bent. What it means is according to his uniqueness, the way that God has made him. And this is where in principle also, later on when we talk about parenting, you will find that the way you bring up each child, even though they come from the same factory, you and your husband or you and your wife, same factory, but all their chops are different, They have very different, you look at them, are you sure you're sisters? You may look alike, but your personalities are so different. Or brothers and all that. Why? Because each one is made very unique in the Lord. So when we train up a child in the way he should go, it means according to his bent, according to the way God has made him, his own likings, his own temperaments. Then you mold him in the way God will lead him. But again, according to his bent in God's design, not your design. Some of us train up in the child in our bent because we want that child to be a medical doctor because we never made it. All right? Now you train and make the child study like crazy, become the doctor, and that child is miserable for the rest of his life. That's not what Proverbs 22:6 is all about. It says, according to how God has made him. Release him to be the best that God has made him to be. Okay? So, practical examples, how will this look like? Now, I like, you talk about focus in the family, and, there's also Alpha, and I'm going to borrow Alpha's, what I call, parenting wheel to start us off, okay? And Alpha's parenting wheel is very, very interesting because they normally start from the middle, but I want to start from our long-term goal. What is our long-term goal in parenting? If you want to talk about timeless principles, you must have a goal that you want to reach. If you have no goal, your arrow will go everywhere. Correct? You know goal, you don't want to hit the target, you just shoot. It will go all over the place, maybe even land just in front of you and never go anywhere. So you need to have a target first. So what is our long-term goal? And we need to communicate this. And in the next slide, I would suggest, probably some of you would look at it, oh yeah, pretty much that. It's a tall order, our overall goal. Okay? Definitely, we want our sons and daughters to grow into mature, independent, godly adults. Okay? Independent. You want them to base their lives on sound principles. They are emotionally, spiritually strong. They have a strong sense of responsibility toward others. They will face good and difficult times with calmness and perseverance, not just give up and, burn out and use the password stress and then don't do anything. Okay? And then when they do get married, we prayerfully pray that they will be competent and faithful husbands and wives, and then parents. Now, I'm sure all of us will say, very good goal, very good goal. How do we get there? That's the important thing. How do we get there? How do we communicate all these? Okay? So that's why using that parenting wheel is important, because they say, if you want to do this, in a wheel, the middle part, the spoke, the hub, okay, is very important, because without the middle, it doesn't hold the spokes together. So that actually supports everything. And God's love, that must be the foundation. Right in the middle of the wheel must be the love of God. Not your love alone. God's love in you, your love with God for them. Okay? So love must be the foundation. And then we go up to the right extreme, just next to the long-term goal. With that strong foundation of love, you want to build strong foundations upon that love, but what other things are you building? You want to be able to communicate what you truly believe as a Christian parent. Okay? Not only your belief system, your values, what do you value? What character traits do you want to pass on to your children? This is what building strong foundations is all about. And as we move around around the wheel, as we are doing all of this, we want to be sure we are meeting our children's needs. That's why I say according to their bent. You want to meet their needs individually as well as a family. Okay? Meeting their needs so that they feel your love. It's not enough for parents for children just to hear you say, I love you, but they can't feel it because they don't see you acting it out in a way that they can receive. Okay? Some parents think that just buying children gifts will be enough to get them to feel your love for them. For some children, gifts are not enough. They want your time. They want your attention. Okay? So meeting their needs is important. The children meet their needs in such a way that they can feel it. And then you want to set boundaries. You want to teach them how to make choices. And we will talk more about setting boundaries later on. Okay, what does it mean to set boundaries? What are boundaries for? They are to keep good things in, bad things out. How do you do this in your life? From a young age, as you grow older, into teenage years, into young adulthood, and then into mature adults. And as you go around it again, then you want to teach them healthy relationships. How do you relate in a healthy way? How do you respect one another? Because that is it is a vital life skill, healthy relationships. Because nowadays, like I say, most of us are so dependent on our mobile phone. In fact, just the other day, we were having a conversation. Oh, it was just yesterday. I had lunch with my former classmates. We've known each other for 50 years, actually, more than 50 years. Since primary one, so more than 50 years, And then each time we enter, then one will go back outside. So where are you going? I left my mobile in the car, Then she comes back, and then another one will come. Oh, I left my mobile in the car, and then she goes out. So I said, oh my goodness, nowadays we can leave our husbands, our children, and all behind, but we can't leave our mobiles. Which is true, right? Unfortunately, true. but we shouldn't be bragging about it. We must manage that dependence on our little mobile. In fact, I'm so conscious now that I'm actually trying now to memorize phone numbers again, especially my children's phone numbers, because I'm so ashamed to admit that the only phone number I know right now is mine and my husband's. That's all. Only 2 phone numbers. How pathetic. I used to have, fingertips. Even Jenny will know. She used to know a lot of phone numbers. So I don't know whether I can remember any of those. I can remember my old home phone number, but it's inactive already. It doesn't make sense. Why can't I remember my children's mobile phone numbers? Because all I have to do is look for dot, press, call. Too dependent. It doesn't help us build healthy relationships. Children at the dining table, for us, one of the things we say, all mobile phones do not come near the dining table. Or if they do, they don't end up in front of you. If there's an emergency, you put it on ringtone, go and answer the emergency. If you're a doctor or whatever, you have standby call, put it somewhere else. But it's not for you to go on social media while we are eating. Okay? Unfortunately, many children cannot carry on a good face-to-face conversation. They are fantastic doing this. They can converse with you using their fingers but not their mouths, which is sad. Okay, which is sad. So we want to help them build healthy relationships. We want to teach them, but we need to model it. And that's where the outer spoke, the circumference of the wheel is important, because that is what makes the wheel go around. Okay? So we need to model this in our lives. Don't just do what I tell you to do what I do. Like Paul says, right? Follow me as I follow Christ. It's so much easier to just say, I told you to do this, and then you don't do it yourself. And then they'll look at you, but you don't do it. Correct? It's almost the same. No handphones at the table, and then the father's handphone comes out. It doesn't make sense, right? Now, we made this mistake, okay? We made this mistake, and the kids I think they were teenagers at that time. Still, the rule applied, okay? And unfortunately, that day, he had an emergency call from the church. So he happened to answer it, and he was at the dining table. And they looked at the dad, they looked at me, and they said, I thought no handphones at the dining table, they asked. So he had to apologize, excuse himself, and he left, and then we talked about it. But they were joking at that time because they knew it was an emergency. But it's something that you give them permission to speak as well. So coming back to the timeless principles. First, you will notice that many of these timeless principles will be present in some form or other in parents who have grown children who are pretty mature, godly, independent as adults, okay? Like I said, we are imperfect, we make our mistakes, but together with God, you see the fruit of our labor because of God. And that's why I can only thank God for the children that He has given to us, for how He has parented them together with us in times that we have failed, in times when we have not been the best examples, because we have pointed them to Him, He has kept them. And we're just so thankful that all 3 of them are still serving Him. Besides Timothy, who is a senior pastor with his wife, our daughters with their spouses are in church. Our daughters, they serve in the worship team, the children's ministry, and they love the Lord. I think that's the most important thing. That's the greatest reward that you can ask for as a parent. So the first timeless principle that I want to share with you is this. Be purposeful and intentional. What do I mean by purposeful and intentional? Oh dear, we are out of time, are we? It's very fast. Okay. Purposeful and intentional. If you have no purpose, like I said, if you don't know your purpose, you're done for. What's our purpose? Love God with all our hearts, soul, strength, mind, love others. And if that's our purpose, we want to be able to teach our children that, to model it for them so that they will also live that way. Intentional means you plan to do it. Parenting is not, it just happens. You need to be intentional, because if you're not intentional, the world will get them. Because the world is very intentional. Social media is very intentional. So if we as Christian parents are not intentional, sorry, we will not make it. So that's why we have to partner with God in our intentionality in parenting our children, which means we look for times to talk to them about God. Whatever testimony you have, don't save it for watch night service, then give testimony. Tell your children every day. Okay, when it happens, you tell them. I tell you, you don't know how far it goes. I didn't know until one day I heard my son give this testimony as he was preaching in church. He said, one of the things that helped me grow are the God stories my parents told me. And I happened to be sitting in his service. Then I sat there, what God stories, And then I realized what he meant. Simple things like, how we prayed when you were sick. How we didn't even pray, and then God gave us a car, kind of thing. So simple things like this, when things happen and we just talk to the children about it and tell them that it's God that provided, they remember these things more than you ever think about. So you need to be intentional. Second principle, be realistic. Like I said, realistically speaking, you have no guarantee over your children's choices. But if you live your life together with God and you are humble, when you be realistic means you need to be humble. You need to realize that you will make a lot of mistakes. Please, when you're teaching your children humility, you need to model humility. So if you have made a mistake, please say you're sorry to your children. Who says adults cannot apologize to children? There have been so many times when I have had to say, I'm sorry, Mommy punished you by mistake. It wasn't your fault. Then they will cry. Then they will say, I forgive you, Mommy, or thank you. I've had to do that. Even as an adult parent, I've had to say sorry, to my children who are adults. But a parent is always a parent. You never stop being a parent. But humility is so important. Humility is not about thinking about yourself. It's not about thinking less of yourself. It doesn't mean, when people say, you're so smart. And if you're smart, don't say you're not lah. It's not thinking less about yourself, but it's thinking about yourself less. Don't think about yourself all the time. So that's what C.S. Lewis said. Okay? And then being realistic is also receiving as well as giving grace, asking for as well as giving forgiveness. That is what being realistic is about. Where you know that you will never reach God's standard. You aim high, but you will fail. So you need the forgiveness, which also means that you expect your children to meet that standard, but they're just as human as you are. So if you need God's grace and forgiveness, you need to be willing to extend it to them as well. You can't have double standards in the home. All right? So that's the other principle. The next one is to be responsible. We not only have to be realistic, we need to be responsible parents. What does it mean to be responsible parents? First, you need to set boundaries. Like I said, what are boundaries? Boundaries are to keep bad things out, good things in. From a very young age, you set boundaries. Children are children. You are the parents. You are the God-given authority over their lives. Please set the boundaries for them. When they are young, they are totally dependent on you. You set their boundaries. You protect them. When our children were little, physical boundaries, for example, will be, you will not go anywhere where I can't see you and you can't see me. So my children would never run off to somewhere that we have no eye contact. Okay. So simple boundaries like that. And you have to enforce your boundaries. So the moment you see them run off, hey! They come back. Okay? Nowadays, maybe you must have those, the leash you have for dogs, you have for children too. Whatever it is. But then you have to teach them, because teaching them obedience is setting boundaries. And obedience is not, tell you 10 times and you obey. Obedience is first time obedience. So again, another boundary will be verbal boundaries. You do not allow them the right to negotiate until they have learned first-time obedience. First-time obedience means when I say, you come home at 12, you come home at 12. When I say, no, you will not have that, you please lah, please lah, please lah. No, please lah, please lah. No means no. Okay? Once they have learned that, then they have earned the right to negotiate. Yes, Mom, I will do this, but would it be possible for just this one time, can I do it this way? Because they have been characterized by first-time obedience, you can give them permission to negotiate. Nowadays, I see parents negotiating with 3-year-olds. Hello, they are 3 years old. They don't know, they can't differentiate. So please don't give them too much freedom. You call the shots until they have learned some maturity, then you slowly give them more freedom. That is setting boundaries. Being responsible also means being adaptable. Parenting is not about being rigid. My rules are set and not to be broken. Rules are not to be broken, yeah, but you can bend the rules. Okay? But who bends the rules? Parents do, not the children. You are the one in charge. So you decide. You choose the battles to fight. You know, to win the war, you don't have to fight every single battle, you know. Some battles you just let go so that you can win the big war. So you have to decide for yourself. And this is where tapping into God's wisdom is so important. Lord, wow, so many fires to put out. Which one do I put out first? Lord, help me. And the Lord said, okay, you just deal with this one. All the rest will go out by itself. And this is what we're talking about. You lead to adapt. Adapting also means you may have one rule, but it may look different for every child. I remember our children growing, especially Timothy, because he's the oldest, okay? So he'll say, not fair, when I was that age, you say, I cannot do this. How come you let Dorothy do this? Then I ask him, what's your name? Timothy. What's her name? Dorothy. So? Oh, okay. I said, they're different timing, different styles. I said, it works for her, but it didn't work for you. You know, it worked for you, but it doesn't work for her. So you have to change the style. So you adapt according to context, according to the way your child is bent. So that's adaptability. That's being responsible. You adapt also according to timings, according to change. As they grow older, your rules or your boundaries may change. So again, use the context. And then the next one about being responsible is to develop this spirit, this attitude of gratitude, which is so missing nowadays. Each time you hear people talk, it's about complaint. Oh yeah, this one no good, that one no good. This one no good, that one no good. You know, it's always critical comments, you know. And I think I did this the last time. You know, a white piece of paper, they zoom in on the dot. Look at the whites versus the dot. Be great, you know, be thankful, appreciate on a regular basis. How does this work? You start yourself. And I really appreciate that one. At every meal, when the children were young, and even till today, thank you for preparing the food. You know, and even in the prayer, thankful, God bless the hands that prepare it. Yeah, I mean, little kids, do they understand? I tell you, they do. Our 3-year-old now, no, she's not 3 anymore. She's 4, turning 5. She will always, you know, I want to pray, you know. When she first started it, I pray after you. Daddy, you pray, then I follow. Now, no need. I pray. And she'll pray 4-5 times, you know. Every time somebody comes to the table, you miss the prayer, so she'll pray again. And she'll pray, you know, about the blessing, but she will always have this, and bless the hands that prepared. So I asked her what it's about. Thank you, Papa, for preparing the food, you know. Kind of thing. So they do understand. Okay, so there's that attitude of gratefulness, gratitude, appreciation. You model it, they will follow. Last principle, okay? We understand that in partnership with God, if we understand that parenting is partnership with God, then we must be willing to follow and model. We follow the Lord, model after Him, and the children are to model after us. Habits are easier caught than taught. They will watch you, and they will do what you do. You look at little children, they walk like their parents. I had this childcare kid who walked in school like this. And then you look, the father, after dropping him off, walks out like this. Exact replica. Because they look and they follow. So we need to follow Jesus, model him, and let the children follow us. But we need to be intentional about it. We are not alone. We are supported by God, Father, Son, and Spirit. Not only by God, but he has also given us one another. You know, there's a saying, it takes a whole village to raise a child. We are the village for every child that God has given to RCA. Every child. And parents, when you partner with God, you will have no shame. You will not be upset if another uncle or auntie pulls your child and disciplines him in church, in love. You know, some parents get very offended. Who are you to do that? You know that, just a reminder for those of you who do baby dedication, when you dedicate your child, I don't know whether you pay attention to what the pastor says or prays, but it's basically giving permission to every uncle, auntie, grandma, granddad here, permission to help you raise that child in the ways of God. Proverbs 22:6 happens in the family of God, not only in your nuclear biological family. You know, one of the things that really saddens me today is that we talk a lot about living as a family of God in church, but we do not practice it. We need to start being serious with God. Not only about Christian parenting. Like I said, everything I'm talking about today is about living with God. So if we live as God's children and we partner with him in life, it means we will live up our responsibility. So I may be a visiting pastor in that sense, but if I see a child misbehaving, by God's grace and God's unction, if I'm in a capacity and at the right moment contextually to be the only one able or available to deal with that child, I should be willing to do that in love and humility and then explain to the parents. I should be willing to do that, and so should you. And if you are the parent, you should be humble enough. We talk about being realistic, right? Humble enough, exercise grace and forgiveness, and accept the help that I have given. If I have made a mistake and disciplined wrongly, then forgive me. Okay? But at least tell me to my face. Don't go and complain to somebody else. Tell me to my face and say, oh, Pastor Angelina, you didn't understand. Then give me the opportunity to be humble and ask your forgiveness and ask the child's forgiveness. That is practical living in partnership with God. That is what we are talking about. So what is the timeless principle? If you want to be sure you raise great children, if you want to be sure you become a great child of God yourself, then I think the key word is to be faithful with God. So the timeless principle of Christian parenting is being faithful with God. And that is what I will leave with you today. That we will all determine in our hearts that we will be faithful. Yes, we are imperfect, but we recognize our responsibility in raising children for the Lord, whether biological or spiritual, but we are able to do this not in our own strength, but we are more than able because of the grace of God and the power of God that resides within us. As we say, yes, God, I'm the candidate. I will partner with you because I recognize this is teamwork. It is not me parenting alone, but it is teamwork. And I live in your family, and I need to start living as a family member, not just as an implant, not just as a visitor, not just as an observer, but I must be a participating family member in your household. Let's just pray.